So it was his first of 2 or 3 GI bleed outs, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, visiting children and grandchildren, and it happened very suddenly. It was very scary and a very big deal. He said he had a peace and calm come over him that he'd never had before, and he knew that he was going to be okay. And I got there after his son took him, and he said, "Really, nobody needs to stay. I know I'm going to be all right." And in fact, he was. And
It's scary to everybody but him then.
he seemed to, once he had that sense of peace and calm, yes, he did better than everybody else. Absolutely. He knew, he had the knowing. He had the what the great feel or the great, that wasn't the thinking, that was the knowing within. I think of the knowing more as a feeling. But
Yeah.
that's what I know about it, David. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's for some reason during the video, I kept reflecting back to an experience I had when I was a little kid. I'm absolutely certain I was not yet in grade school, so I'm guessing 4 or 5 years of age, and I was sitting on the dining room of my grandmother's house, playing with some toys. My mom and my grandmother were there. I can picture this so clearly. And all of a sudden I had an announcement. I was like, I can't die. I was so clear that there was no way that I could die. And I just felt compelled to say that. And of course I was quickly corrected by both my grandmother and my mother. No, you drove in front of a car and but there was just this total sense, and I had so few memories of my childhood but that just crystal clear in my mind still.
Don't you think you were at that age where you're still more closely connected to the other world? I mean, in my experience with my grandchildren and everything, there is a delineation where for several, at least 5 years, if not 6, they're so connected with all that is, with God, with creation. They're so connected to the invisible world, the world that we try to describe and can't. Anybody else have an experience like David's?
I wrote a poem. One of the lines is, I'm 4003 going on eternally. My daughter thinks I'm not even a fruitcake, but I know I'm not. That's what counts.
Love it. I had an experience when I was about 12, a mountaintop experience, and I literally was on a small mountain in, it was either North or South Carolina, at a spiritual retreat. And I was by myself, and there'd been some hard things go on in the dorm where I was staying, and it was just one of those times where you're connected and you know that there is so much more than the world around you. And I felt fully connected, and in that moment I knew that I was connected to the divine, to source, to God, and would be forever. It was powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah, there's something special about these great things, great feels, great resolves, in that most of the time, I can speak for myself, most of my life, I have been lost in my thoughts, or I've been lost in my feelings, or I've been lost in my to-do list, always extensive. And it's interesting because that's not what we're talking about here. But every now and then, a thought, a feeling, a resolve is so connected with all that is. It's so connected with the beginning and the end of my life, or whatever, that suddenly I'm transported out of this little thought into a consuming thought, consuming experience. And these states of being, I think the value of us learning how to talk about and experience and point to a state of being as opposed to just a feeling or a thought is that it acknowledges that I am continually in the presence of all that is. And by that I mean not just some wacky mystery, but last week my buddy Dave Tanner got out of here, and a couple of days before that, I called my friend John Kramer, as I've done for the last 20 years. And Al, you may be interested to know, he was the guy that we all ran CDS with in Chicago 45 years ago. Nonetheless, I've called him every day on every birthday for the last 20 years. And as I did this year, on May the 8th, and cell phone was disconnected. And so called the home phone, no answer. And so I went to his Facebook page because he's prolific on Facebook. And sure enough, last entry was March 19th. And so I did a little Google search, and there in the obituaries was John. Didn't quite make it to his 75th birthday, one way or the other. But the point of all this is that and both these guys were at my wife Ann's memorial service last year. And it's interesting when one reaches a point in life where there are perhaps more significant folks in one's life that are no longer around, no longer visible, and yet very present, very real. And what does it mean when? And I'm not talking about some out of the world experience here. I'm talking about my experience. I'm talking about my state of being. And those people who have sort of crawled into my being throughout my lifetime, when they disappear, they don't disappear. So when we're dealing with these states of being, we're dealing with how much awareness do I choose to live before in any given moment of my life? And does my awareness only encompass what's right before my eyes, or what I happen to be touching, or how I happen to be feeling today? Or does my awareness find its home in a deeper place, in a more encompassing place? That so anyway, it's nothing more to say, but it's just somehow these significant figures disappearing deliver me to states of being I otherwise might not have chosen to be present to.
Death has a way of doing that, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. Any other? Go ahead, please, Al. Al, unmute yourself. Unmute.
It's a little bit of a cop-out for me to keep talking so much about not knowing I was just listening to you, Michael, and I like to listen to you. But I was saying to myself, I'm not anywhere in that experience that he's having. I know I can understand what he described. And so I see myself as locked out. It's not just this particular comment, but I see myself as locked out. And when I see myself as locked out, as if the tomb had a padlock on it, and I'm locked in, it's then I kind of awaken to things that I felt locked out from. Affirmation, appreciation, goodness. And so it is a mystery to me to, by the way, I very much appreciate the presentation of this session today. The stuff on the other world and Gene Marshall's work and Joe Matthews' work and Michael May's work, all of this I don't have any leg up on, and I've been through it before. And I'm waiting in this locked out state to discover what's what.
Well, that clears it up for me, Al. Oh, yeah. Okay. Maybe with that we ought to end unless somebody else has something significant to say. All right. Well, let's all go into this next week, not having a clue about what's going on, and maybe next week we can know even less.
Great plan.
All right. I'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Michael, thank you, everybody.
I'm going to hold you to your word.
Yes.